Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. Welcome to the community live stream. My name is Chuck Tomasi, just like it says right there at ServiceNow. I am the ServiceNow guy with the bow tie. I apologize about the streaming issue. I know some of you were waiting around. Had a little bit of an issue starting the first stream. Got it going this time. No, it's flashing red, so we're going to see what happens. Oh, it's back to green. It's not a bandwidth issue. I think it's a YouTube thing this morning. So bear with me. If all else fails, I do have a local recording that I will upload to YouTube later, and you can watch it there. So good morning, Shane and Drew. Thanks for joining me. I am keeping one eye on the video monitor screen just to see make sure everything is still going right. Apologies. So it is an orange day, so we're going to be doing code decoded. Bear with me as I go through the pre-roll. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure you subscribe, like, hit the bell, all that good stuff, and let people know that it's there. You'll get notifications when it comes up at the URL that you see right there. YouTube, you know what to do. Also available on Twitch at twitch.tv/NOWCommunity. Go over there, take a look. Don't forget, it is not too late to go to knowledge.servicenow.com. Knowledge is going for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. Last week was CreatorCon. Had a wonderful time being the host of that channel and talking to Pat Casey. If you haven't seen that, it's available on demand. You can still go over there, go to the scheduler. I've got a couple more sessions for the community this week, 3 I think, and I get to be, I have a little spot on the ANZ morning show. They're doing a special one for that region. I'm going to jump on, do a recording tonight that will show up in a couple of days, and talk a little bit about what happened last week with Liz Fazone, one of our rock star SCs out of Australia. So look forward to seeing that. Good morning. Thank you everybody for joining me, or in some cases rejoining me this morning. This is a bit of a one-man show, and anything can happen, and usually does. Still keeping an eye on that thing. It's green. It's staying green. Oh. We're gonna stay right there. All right, we will be doing some JavaScript this morning, and if you want to learn more about JavaScript, be sure to go over to that bit.ly link that you see right there, bit.ly/sn-learn-js. There's a whole series starting you from basic syntax right on through scripted REST APIs and everything in between, looping and if conditions and switch statements and while loops, and it's a lot of stuff. You can take it at your own pace, lots of little small sections, as if you were doing a mini training course. There's no certification for this, unfortunately. I know a lot of you pride yourselves on your certifications, but thank you very much. And apologies if I'm talking really fast. I want to get through this pre-roll and get to the scripting stuff. If you're watching at double speed, slow down. You might miss something. I know some of you watch later at double speed just to save some time. I will be taking the code that's written today, putting that in GitHub. There will be a link on the show notes, on the community, and in the YouTube description. So, hello, Chuck. This week is Knowledge, not too many labs. Any reason for that? You can do labs from the previous weeks, though. They are available on demand if you go to nowlearning.com. In fact, let me just get to that. Here we go. Where did I skip over it? No, I did not skip over it. You can go to nowlearning.servicenow.com where you can get some of those labs on demand. I don't know what the schedule is for hands-on labs. My focus was really on the CreatorCon stuff last week. So I had a number of live sessions around the world, and then those will be on demand this week. Whatever's in the labs this week will go on demand next week. So this week's theme is Now on Now, where we show you how we're using stuff and customers are using our platform and our applications to enhance their work productivity, make their work flow, if you will. So let's continue on. Where was I? Page 1. Page 2. Here we go. So today's lesson is all about dealing with null values in scripting. See, orange, it's a scripting day. Code decoded, that's what it is. Thank you very much for joining. And hello, Alan, good to see you. So these questions are inspired and taken directly from the community. But before I go on, there's one thing I want to show you on the community that's a lot of fun that showed up. Chris McClendon, and I will have a link in this in the show notes. Chris McClendon posted this. If you look on the community, search for ServiceNow Mind Games. Put together this very clever wordplay game, and just to see if you can figure out what some of these are. We played this at the GlideFast after party on Friday. It was like a happy hour thing after the CreatorCon stuff was done. Had a lot of fun. There's a number of in here that I didn't know. There's a couple that I still don't know, or I'm not sure of 100%. But it is a lot of fun if you want to have some fun. For example, this is onload client script. Okay, you see the client is written in a script font. Client is on load. Okay, that's the way it goes. I'm not going to ruin any more for you, but you can figure them out. There are a couple of them here that are very, very clever once you figure them out. Wow, somebody really used good imagination on that. A lot of fun. Search again for ServiceNow Mind Games. Otherwise, I'll have a link on the community post after that. So I invite you to do that. I am using a developer instance, which I don't have my title for the developer portal. So let's do that. You can get a free developer instance over at a personal developer instance at developer.servicenow.com. Here, we'll do that again. Didn't hear the bell, but maybe it'll come up later. Go for that. There it is. Delay for whatever reason. I'm going to check my soundboard app, what's going on with that. One-man show, a lot of fun. Anything could happen, and usually does. Audio goes bad in between what, Drew? Help me understand. I'm showing that I'm broadcasting audio, but I'd like to know if I do have some broadcast issues. Otherwise, again, if this broadcast is totally garbage, I'll upload the MP4 directly to YouTube and post that instead, and we can go off of that. So if there's something you want to watch or rewatch, you can find it there. The personal developer instance, I mentioned that. There are meetups also still going on, virtual meetups happening all over the world at this URL. I go over to, see if I can get that. Meetup. Nope. Why is the meetup title not working? My meetup title isn't even around. I lost my meetup title. Oh, that's a bummer. Okay, well, we'll figure out what happened to my meetup title. Let's turn the title off. Meetup.com/pro. So, just go to the developer portal. There's a link that'll get you there. So hopefully we'll continue on, and I'm going to soldier on with today's lesson. Free personal developer instance. I've been tinkering with this application that's been happening on and off. We've got, that is not the application. Let's get back to my employee instance. I've got an application called CLS, Community Livestream. Very simple table in here of employees. Hey, Chuck, what is your success quote? My success quote? I don't know that I have a success quote, but I'll think of one before the end of the show. The employees table, very simple. I can show you, just has a name field, date of hire, date of birth, as if you were keeping track of some employee records. Could be any records. It could be coffee mugs in the cabinet. I don't care. But the idea here is some of these fields may have a null value, such as the date of hire. So let's go to our first script. I'm going to go to example 1, and it's going to take the state field. And if you look, I'm going to focus on just these few lines. Again, apologies if this gets over your head on scripting. There's nothing really advanced in here. I'm setting an ID variable, just a sysid of that Craig record. Then I go and get a glide record from that table, which is defined in a script include called constants, so that I don't have to remember what the table is and type out my x_66238 underscore blah, 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 blah. This is easier to type, easier to remember, easier to change later. Then I get the record. Okay, I already know this record exists. I've got the glide record that retrieves it from the database, one and only one record, and say set the state from gr.state. Very common. I see a lot of people doing this. It's wrong. Okay, it's prone to problems. Then I'm going to print out what is the value of state and what is the type of state. Focus on this statement. Very handy if you haven't written it. Useful for debugging. Type of can tell you if you're dealing with the right kind of thing or the wrong kind of thing, because JavaScript is what they call a loosely typed language. It's loosely typed. You can take an integer variable and stick it in a string variable and it just goes okay, whereas strongly typed languages don't let you do that without the proper casting and conversion. I'm not going to get into that, but because of that, we can run into a number of problems. Let me take that and put it into script background so that you can see what's going to happen. And somewhere I have scripts background. There it is. And run that. And it says state is FTE, which is correct. If you look, state over here is FTE. And the value behind it is lowercase FTE. That's where you see the difference in that. And notice that the type of says this is an object. Okay, I have just set an object variable. So what you thought might be a string over here in var state is not a string. And there are people that will go, well, that's easy to do. Just put a toString on there. Okay? To me, that's a hack. Okay? That's not the right way to do it. I'll show you a better way to do it that makes more sense. Rather than forcing a type, you can use getters and setters. So if you haven't learned that lesson yet. I'm also going to add on whether or not it is set, whether it is true or false. Okay? If it is set, if it is null, if it is blank, if it is got the value false, if it's a number 0, it's what we call a falsy condition. If it's something other than that, it's a truthy condition. Now you may get an empty variable, and if you do this gr.state thing and state isn't set, you will get a truthy value even if the value is false. That's a false indicator. Okay? It says, hey, there's something, excuse me, you will get a true. It says, there's something in here. It's an object. Not a null value, not an empty value. It's an object. It has some worth to it, so it's going to come back as true. Let's take this whole script and run it in script's background again. And you can see state is truthy because it does have a value. Its value is FTE. If I were to take this and set it back to none, meaning it has no value, okay, there is nothing in that field right now, and run it again, it says falsy. Okay, I just lied. my impression of what was going to happen didn't happen, and that's a good thing. That's how we remember and we discover. But it still says it's an object. That's not right. It's not an object. I mean, technically it is when you do a gr.state, but that's not what I want because I may want to search it as a string. So how do I do that? Let's move on to example 2. Slight modification. We're using getValue here, which means this won't say object anymore. Let's go get that. Put that into script's background. You can see when I paste that, all that changed was right there. Was that state, went to state. Same check for truthy and falsy. And it says, it's null. We're getting somewhere. It's not empty. It actually has a value. The value is null. Null is a falsy value. Now, this still says object. Why does that say object? That's not what I expected. I expected it to be a string. Now, there's another thing that we can do here. The trick is it's coming in from getValue as a null. But if I try to set the value as a null, check this out. Okay, if it is not state, if it says it's falsy, if it's truthy, I want to set it back to null. Okay, so I've got this logic down here that says, yep, it's in fact false right now with a null value. So let's go and try to set it with that bottom part of the logic. Set it to FTE, save the record, and here's where the problem comes in. Whether you're using the old method or the current method and using gr.state or getValue state, watch what happens. It says state is truthy, which we would expect it to run. It ran this statement. We know it ran that statement. But watch this. Gr set value, set it to null, and then update. But it did not update. All right, Charles, what if you did gr.state equals null? Give me my cursor back here. Hit the right keys on the keyboard, it might help. gr.state equals null. Can we do that? Because I see that in scripts all the time. Let's try that. Paste it in, same script, and it says it's still truthy. It's got a positive value of FTE. We can see that right there. It is a string. We used getValue. It is truthy. Therefore, these next two lines, 13 and 14, should have run, and we should see, maybe I should try a reload. Nope, still stuck at FTE. You can get a null value from a script, but you can't set a null value from a script, and that can be highly irritating. Okay. All right. Sridharan says, hey Chuck, isn't Python more easy to code in ServiceNow than GS? We don't have Python in ServiceNow. We have JavaScript. I am not a Python programmer. I looked at it. I understand it's easy to learn. I didn't have much need for it other than to run something on a Raspberry Pi to check a REST API. And frankly, I found the indentation irritating. If your syntax is driven by the indentation, I didn't really care for it. If it's great to get people learning instead of like an older language like Visual Basic or something, fine. Learn to program. Please learn to program. But as far as learning another language, I don't have a whole lot of value for Python right now. That may change in a year depending on what projects. But ServiceNow doesn't support Python directly. You can potentially run Python, say, on another system through a mid-server. Gonna leave it at that. Today's lesson is about JavaScript. But good question. Good question. Let's go to example 3. Now, note line 7 changed a little bit. And it does something for me. Rather than getting a null value, remember what it said here? When I had no value, let's go back to null, save, back it up, and it will either say the actual value or it will say the word null when that field is empty. And this is true for choiceless, reference fields, dates. There's a lot of fields that return a value of null. So be aware of this. This isn't just choiceless. When you run that null value, oh, wrong screen. Go here, back here. Example 3. I've put on this pipe empty quotes. Okay, that is JavaScript's way of doing if this is empty, if this has no value, then I'm going to assign a value. I use this all the time, and you will see this in certain places like for gs.getProperty. gs.getProperty says, go get a property, but if you can't get a property, here's a temporary value. Okay, that's one way to do it. Okay, that's what this says. Go get the state, but if you can't get the state, I'll give you a value. And maybe this is, some default value. This also forces it to go from null to string. It says, you're going to get a string whether you like it or not. Okay. And then it will say type of string down here, and it should say those two angle less than greater thans bashed right up against each other rather than saying null. It will still say falsy because empty string is a falsy condition. So let's run that. And it says, there they are, smashed up against each other. I returned an empty string. It's not null anymore. It came out of the field as null, but I transformed it in a way, okay, if you want to think of it that way. Into a string, I know what my data type is just from putting that pipe empty quote on there. And I've ensured that it is falsy. But does that solve the problem with this? Notice that this is no longer trying to set a null. It's setting an empty string. So I'm getting a null out, converting it to a string, then setting an empty string back. So theoretically, if I change Craig to something other than empty on that field and run this, these two statements are going to run. It will definitely run this one, say, hey, it's truthy. It's set to FTE. That's the actual value that came out of there. This part will not run right here where I did the pipe because I got something. I got a real, honest to goodness string out of here. You don't need to force me to do something else. And let's see what happens when we change that from set value null to set value empty string. And it goes, it's truthy. Look, this up here is evidence that I updated the record. So it did in fact update it, and I see the little heartbeat says this was modified. It's set back to null or empty. So this is one of those bizarre things about scripting that you're going to have to remember. The database has a null value, but to set a null value, you use an empty string. Wacko, I know, but that's why I wanted to show it to you today. This is just kind of craziness. There's one other example. Let's see if I have it in here. Example 4, which does this for, I want to show you about dot walking. Once upon a time, I know this was broken. I know this caused a null pointer exception, but it no longer does. This is really weird. I thought it would. It doesn't. best practice is to test your values. Here's what's going to happen. I am going to go get the same record. I know it's Craig 9611990, 9619990, because that's the record I was getting before. And I am going to get the inspector field, dot walk to the manager field, dot walk to the department field, okay, because it's linked up to sysuser. Do I have an inspector field? Stats, inspector, okay? Inspector is empty. Now, here's the deal. This script is assuming inspector has a value. And then dot walks on and goes, well, go retrieve that record and tell me what it's all about. Go retrieve that record, tell me what it's all about. And I'm going to dot walk my way through this database. Very easy to do in scripting. However, we're starting out with a null value. This used to fail and dump this big old ugly message into the log that said null pointer exception. Because inspector is null and you're asking me to reference something that has no value, I went, no, let's not do that. It no longer does. I found this very impressive. But that doesn't mean you can still get away with this, or you should. Let's go to this, and if department has a value, it will say department is set. Otherwise, it will say department is not set. Make that a little bigger, little bigger. There we are. And it says department is not set. Also note that in my system logs, probably make a liar out of me again. No, it says department is not set. There's my log message. There's the script I just ran. But there's no null pointer exception. Thank you, platform developers, for catching this and not crashing this. Still not a good idea, and you should always test your variables before assuming they get what they get. Because even if I had changed this script to set a value, for example, var department equals gr.inspector, and yes, this is going to get department, an object, and I were to say, let's display that, gs.info department. We'll make that a little friendlier. So we could say department equals, run that, bada boom, bada boom. Department equals nothing. Again, check the logs. Did anything blow up on me? Refresh. Nothing blew up. It just says we got somebody else. There's a whole bunch of other log messages in here that I don't want to see. But it's in here. Trust me. Oh, you know what? I didn't sort from Z to A. That was part of the problem. Department not set. Department is empty. There's the script. Right? Best idea is to put some checking in here. So this is where I would say if gr.inspector, actually I'd go with something like this. If we can do it either way. gr.inspector, then continue on with a little more code. If gr.inspector.manager, then continue on with a little more code, and then say if, then we can get down to this part. What this gives you is the ability to, almost like a try-catch, where you can catch your failed messages. You can put an else down here, for example, and say else gs.info manager not set. You know, I'm mixing single quotes and double quotes. The universe will implode on me. And I can say else gs.info. And you can make these gs.errors if you want, error out, and say inspector not set. And really, now you can detail where the data integrity issue is. If you've got an issue with people forgetting to set the inspector, it will say, inspector's not set. You could put a message on the screen and say, I can't continue with this logic. Please go set the inspector, or make it mandatory at that point. So why not bang gsinspector.nil? You know, I used nil and is nil and not nil, and I used a lot of those methods before, but I found them not necessary. Just saying, using them as truthy falsies is fine. If it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not. Somebody showed me that. It's just a shortcut way of doing the same thing. And there were some subtle differences. I think this was one of my first community posts back in early 2009, shortly after becoming a customer, was what's the difference between null, nil, not null, empty string quote. And I found there's even one, I think it's a JSUtil.nil. Like, wow, there's a whole lot of them. And I believe it was John Anderson that just said, you know what, just use this. I mean, if you want to see if it's positive, you do that. If you want to see if it's negative, you do that, and it'll just work. It says, okay, why am I writing all this extra code to try and catch these corner cases when one universal statement works for you? So, is empty is important to know. All right, thanks, Drew. But that's the way I found it to work. I haven't run into any problems using just the raw truthy and falsies, checking objects and properties and Boolean values. Works out really well. That is all I had for you today. Again, I will have these scripts up on GitHub at bit.ly/sn-cls. You'll find them in the folder dated with today's folder. This is May 18th, 2020. And with that, I am going to, let's see, did we play our game? I'll give you one more clue, just because you hung around. This one says Merriam-Webster, then a line, Uber, and Lyft. That is a dictionary overrides. Plural, because there's two of them. If it just said Uber, there'd be dictionary override. So have fun with that. I think one of my favorites was 14 and 11. If you can figure those out, you'll get a good laugh. Until then, let me go back to here, and I will check the broadcast to make sure everything worked. Thank you very much. I will see you Thursday to talk about, it's in Flow Designer. What was it? The decision tables, decision trees, how you put those together. If you watched my workshop CCW 2787 last week, or you're watching that on demand, you'll see some repeat in here. But it was very interesting to learn about them, very powerful stuff. So decision trees and decision tables, Flow Designer, how that all fits together, how you can make your logic and decision making separate from the flow to reduce maintenance and hopefully delegate some of those things. So until then, I will bring up the music. Bring up the music app again. Wrong keyboard again. And bid you all a fond farewell. Go learn something, go share it, and be helpful. Till then, take care. Bye.